Hello everyone and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now, let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Jerry Mountainheart, and I've been pulling people out of caves for 17 years. That's 847 successful rescues, if you're counting. I am. Every single one matters when you're working in the Daniel Boone National Forest, where the Devil's Backbone Ridge cuts through Kentucky like God's own knife wound. I grew up in Hazard, in a coal company town where the mine owned your house, your food, even the air you breathed underground. My daddy worked those tunnels for 32 years before black lung took him. I decided early on I'd spend my life on the surface, but somehow I still ended up going into holes in the ground, just different holes. Ones I could come back out of. People think cave rescue is exciting. It's not. It's slow, careful work with ropes and headlamps and constant checking of your equipment. You measure twice, anchor 3 times, and you never, ever rush. The caves don't care if you're in a hurry. They've been here for millions of years. They'll be here millions more after you're gone. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the Hollow King when I was little. She was Cherokee and Scots-Irish, mixed with more stories than teeth by the time I knew her. The Hollow King was supposed to be some ancient chief who got trapped underground and became ruler of all the cave systems in Appalachia. She said he could move through stone like water, and that he was building an army down there, waiting for the right time to take back the mountains. I never believed a word of it. Figured it was just her way of keeping us kids from wandering into dangerous caves and breaking our necks. Should have listened to Grandma. November 12th, 1976 started normal enough. Cold morning, frost on my truck windshield, coffee so strong it could strip paint. I was at the ranger station doing paperwork when the call came in. 4 University of Kentucky students, geology team, hadn't come back from Devil's Backbone cave system. They were supposed to be out by nightfall yesterday. It was now 9 in the morning. Their professor was on the phone, voice shaking. Dr. Margaret Whitfield and 3 students, all experienced cavers, all with proper equipment. Their van was still parked at the trailhead, but no sign of them at the cave entrance. I grabbed my gear and radioed for backup. Thomas McKinney said he'd meet me there. Thomas was good people, been doing cave rescue for 5 years, strong as an ox and smart as they come. If we needed to go deep, I wanted him with me. The drive to Devil's Backbone took 40 minutes on winding mountain roads. November had already stripped the trees bare, and the forest looked like skeleton fingers reaching for a gray sky. When I got to the trailhead, I saw their van immediately. Also saw something that made my stomach drop. All their equipment was laid out in a perfect circle at the cave entrance. Ropes, headlamps, helmets, backpacks. Everything arranged neat as Sunday dinner plates, about 10 feet from the cave mouth. I radioed it in and waited for Thomas. While I waited, I checked the equipment. All of it was in perfect condition. No mud, no scuff marks. The ropes weren't even dirty. But these students had been planning to go at least 500 feet into the cave system. You can't do that without getting your gear dirty. That's just physics. Thomas arrived 20 minutes later in his old Ford pickup. He took one look at the circle of equipment and said, "What I was thinking. That ain't right." "No," I agreed. "It ain't." We geared up and approached the cave entrance. Devil's Backbone Cave is a pretty standard limestone system, about 8 feet high at the mouth, narrowing as you go deeper. It connects to about 400 other caves in the ridge. Some of them are mapped. Most aren't. I clicked on my Petzl headlamp and called into the cave, the way you're supposed to. Your voice bounces off the walls and tells you a lot about the space ahead. If there's a big chamber, you hear it. If it narrows down tight, you hear that too. I called out, "Hello, this is Kentucky Park Service Cave Rescue. Anyone in there?" My voice echoed back normal enough at first. Then, about 5 seconds later, I heard something impossible. My own voice, echoing back from what sounded like miles deep. That shouldn't happen. The main chamber of Devil's Backbone only goes about 300 feet before it splits into smaller passages. There's nowhere for an echo to travel that far. Thomas heard it too. I saw his jaw tighten. "Acoustics is funny underground," I said. "Yeah," Thomas said, but he didn't sound convinced. We entered the cave. The temperature hit me first. It should have been cold, we were having an early freeze, and cave temperatures in November usually sit around 50 degrees. But the moment we stepped inside, warmth wrapped around us like a blanket. Had to be 70 degrees, maybe more. You feel that? Thomas asked. Thermal vent, maybe, I said. Underground hot spring. But I knew Devil's Backbone. I'd been in this cave maybe 50 times over the years. It had never been warm before. We moved carefully, checking every foothold, every handhold. The cave floor was smooth limestone, worn down by thousands of years of water flow. Our headlamps cut through the darkness, throwing wild shadows on the walls. About 200 feet in, we found Dr. Whitfield's journal. It was sitting on a flat rock, perfectly dry, open to the last entry. I picked it up carefully and read by headlamp light. The first few entries were normal: geological surveys, measurements, rock samples. Standard stuff. But the last entry, dated yesterday afternoon, made my skin crawl. Asterisk. Found cathedral chamber, not on any survey map. Massive space, maybe 200 feet high. Central feature appears to be carved throne. Dave says it's impossible. This area has been protected since 1960 seconds. No one's been allowed to carve anything. But the throne is there. And it looks occupied. Like someone was sitting there recently. The stone is warm. We're going to investigate further. The king wants to meet us. Asterisk. The handwriting in that last sentence was shaky, wrong, like someone had written it while their hand was trembling. The king, Thomas said quietly. I didn't want to think about Grandma's stories. I handed him the journal and kept moving. The cave should have narrowed here. I'd mapped this section myself back in '71. But instead, the passage opened up into a chamber I'd never seen before. It was enormous. My headlamp beam couldn't reach the ceiling. The walls were covered in flowstone formations that should have taken 1,000,000 years to form. And in the center of the chamber, there was a throne. Not a rock that looked like a throne. An actual throne, carved from the living limestone, with armrests and a high back and intricate patterns that looked like Cherokee designs. My grandmother had a blanket with patterns like that. The stone seat was warm. I could see heat shimmer rising from it in my headlamp beam. Jerry, Thomas said. His voice had gone high and tight. Jerry, look at the walls. I turned. The walls were covered in fresh petroglyphs. Cherokee symbols, animals, warriors. The limestone around them was lighter in color, like it had just been carved. Yesterday, maybe. This morning. But this cave had been sealed and protected for 16 years. Nobody came in here without ranger permission, and I sure as hell hadn't given permission for anyone to carve up protected cave formations. Could be natural dissolution patterns. I said, limestone does weird things. Limestone don't carve words, Thomas said, pointing. He was right. Mixed in with the symbols were words in Cherokee syllabary. I didn't read Cherokee, but my grandmother had taught me to recognize it. These were fresh. I could see tiny fragments of stone dust still on the cave floor. Beneath them. My radio crackled, static, mostly. We were too deep for clear transmission, but through the static, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Singing. Old-timey mining songs, the kind my daddy used to hum while he worked. But the words were wrong. They were in Cherokee. And they were coming through my emergency cave rescue frequency, which nobody else had access to. You hearing this? I asked Thomas. He nodded, his face pale in the lamplight. The singing cut off abruptly. Then a voice spoke through the static. Deep, old, with an accent I couldn't place. The rangers are welcome in our kingdom. The mountain remembers you, Jeremiah Mountain Heart. Your grandmother spoke of you. I dropped the radio. It clattered on the stone floor. Thomas grabbed my arm. We need to leave, right now. But before we could move, I heard something behind us. A sound like stone grinding against stone. I turned. The passage we'd come through was smaller. The walls had moved inward, narrowing the exit. That's not possible, I whispered. Jerry. The grinding sound came again, louder this time. The throne chamber was changing around us. New passages were opening in the walls, dark mouths leading deeper into the mountain. The flowstone formations were growing, spreading, reshaping themselves while we watched. And sitting on the throne though I swore it had been empty a second ago, was David Ashford. I recognized him from the photo the professor had provided. 22 years old, geology student, bright future ahead of him. His eyes were solid black, no whites, no pupils, just black, like pools of crude oil. He smiled at us. "The king has been waiting," David said. "He has work for mountain people. I've seen a lot of strange things in caves. Hypothermia makes people hallucinate. Carbon dioxide poisoning causes confusion. I once pulled a guy out who swore he'd seen his dead mother waiting for him in a side passage. Turned out he'd been breathing bad air for 6 hours. But David Ashford's black eyes were real. And he wasn't breathing bad air. My gas detector showed normal oxygen levels, no carbon dioxide, no methane. Whatever was wrong with him, it wasn't environmental." "David," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I'm Jerry Mountainheart, Kentucky Park Service. Your professor sent us to find you. We need to get you to the surface." David tilted his head like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. "The surface is loud. Too much sunlight, too much noise. Down here, everything is quiet. Everything makes sense." "Where are the others?" Thomas asked. "Dr. Whitfield and the other 2 students?" "Working," David said simply. He stood up from the throne, moving in a way that wasn't quite right. Too smooth. Too fluid. Like his joints didn't work the same as they used to. "The king needs the kingdom expanded. More rooms, more passages. They're helping." The grinding sound came again, and I realized it was coming from deeper in the cave. The sound of tools hitting stone. Pickaxes and hammers, the rhythm my daddy had worked to his whole life. "Show us," I said. David smiled wider. His teeth looked normal at least. That was something. He led us through one of the new passages. My compass was going crazy, needles spinning in circles, never settling on north. My altimeter said we were descending, but I could swear we were walking level. The cave formations were wrong too. Stalactites and stalagmites that couldn't have grown in less than a day, but there they were, fresh and dripping. We walked for what felt like 10 minutes but could have been longer. Time gets weird underground. You lose your sense of it without the Sunday. Then we heard the hammering clearly. The passage opened into another massive chamber. This one was even bigger than the throne room, and it was full of people working. Dr. Margaret Whitfield and 2 students, a daughter. Young woman and a young man were using primitive stone tools to carve the walls, expanding the chamber, creating what looked like an amphitheater. Rows of stone seats, all facing a central platform. Their hands were bleeding. The students' hair had grown long, hanging past their shoulders, even though the professor's report said the young man kept his hair short. Their fingernails were extended, curved like claws, caked with limestone dust. They didn't stop working when we entered. Didn't even look at us. Just kept hammering and carving with steady, mechanical precision. "Dr. Whitfield," I called. "I'm here to help you. We need to leave now." She paused, turned slowly. Her eyes were black too. All 3 of them had those terrible empty eyes. "The kingdom needs builders," she said. "The king has been patient for 200 years. But now the time is coming. The mountains will be ours again." Thomas grabbed my arm. "Jerry, their hands, I saw it. Their hands weren't bleeding because of cuts. The blood was coming from under their fingernails, where new bone was growing, extending their fingers, reshaping them into digging tools. "This is carbon monoxide poisoning," I said, but I didn't believe it even as I spoke. "Mass hallucination from bad air." "Your grandmother knew the truth," David said from behind us. He'd followed us silently. "She told you the stories. Dragging Canoe, the Cherokee chief who wouldn't surrender, wouldn't walk the trail of tears. He chose transformation instead. He became the stone. He became the mountain. And he's been waiting here, building his kingdom, waiting for the right time to take back what was stolen." The name Dragging Canoe hit me like a punch to the gut. He was real. A real Cherokee war chief from the 1792nd who'd fought against white settlement, who'd disappeared during a raid in 1792. Nobody ever found his body. "That's a legend," I said. "Legends are just history. People stop believing," David replied. The grinding sound intensified. All around us, the cave walls began moving again, passages reshaping themselves, new chambers forming. I watched limestone flow like water. Stalactites growing upward instead of down, formations that violated every law of geology I knew. And then I heard the voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere. From the stone itself, resonating through the cave floor, through the walls, through my bones. Jeremiah Mountain Heart, son of miners, grandson of the people. You belong here. Your blood knows these mountains. Your family worked these tunnels for 3 generations. The coal companies took everything from you. Join us. Help us take it back. Thomas had gone very still beside me. I looked at him and saw his eyes changing. The whites were turning gray, darkness seeping in from the edges. Thomas, I said sharply, look at me. He blinked, and for a moment his eyes cleared. I can hear it, he whispered. Jerry, I can hear him in my head. He's showing me things. My granddaddy, the mine collapse in '59 that killed him. The company knew the supports were bad. They knew, and they sent him down anyway. The king says, he says there's justice here, says we can make them pay. Thomas, we're leaving, right now. But the passage we'd entered through was gone. The wall had sealed itself, smooth limestone where there'd been an opening 30 seconds ago. We were trapped. The 3 students and Dr. Whitfield had stopped working. They were standing now, arranged in a circle around us, stone tools in their transformed hands. Not threatening, exactly, just waiting. The king would like to meet you properly, David said. He rarely comes forth for visitors. But for the grandson of one who remembered him, he'll make an exception. The central platform in the chamber began to rise. Stone grinding on stone, a pillar growing from the cave floor, lifting up toward the ceiling. And standing on top of it, forming out of the living rock itself, was something that used to be human. 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what might have been armor once but was now fused with limestone and coal, stalactites growing from his shoulders like a crown, anthracite coal burning in his eye sockets with a light that had nothing to do with fire. The Hollow King, dragging canoe. He looked at me, and I felt the weight of 200 years of rage and patience. Welcome home, grandson of the mountain, he said. I want to tell you I was brave, that I stood tall and faced down a Cherokee war chief who'd become something more than human. But the truth is, I was terrified. My legs were shaking so bad I could barely stand. The Hollow King stepped down from his platform, and the stone beneath his feet rippled like water. He moved with impossible grace for something made of rock and coal and fury. Your grandmother was wise, he said, his voice echoing from every surface. She remembered the old ways. She taught you the blessings, didn't she? The words to honor the stone? He was right. Grandma had taught me Cherokee words, prayers to speak before entering a cave. I'd always thought they were just traditions, respectful gestures to honor her heritage. I don't want trouble, I said, and my voice only shook a little. I just want to get these people to the surface. They need medical attention. The Hollow King laughed. It sounded like boulders rolling downhill. They need nothing from the surface. They are being reborn, transformed into what they were always meant to be. Children of the mountain, servants of the stone. He moved closer, and I could smell coal smoke and deep earth. You should join them willingly, Jeremiah. Your expertise in these caves would be valuable. You know every tunnel, every passage. You could help build the kingdom, help prepare for the day we rise. Rise for what? I asked. To reclaim what was stolen. The mining companies tore apart these mountains, poisoned the water, killed the people. The coal barons got rich, while men like your father died in the dark. That ends. When my kingdom is complete, when I have enough servants, we will emerge. We will collapse every mine, every shaft, every tunnel the companies built on stolen land. We will take back the mountains. Thomas stepped forward. The gray in his eyes was spreading. He's right, Jerry. They killed our people for profit. My granddaddy, your daddy, hundreds of others. The king can give us justice. That's not justice, I said. That's revenge. And it won't bring them back. It will honor them, the Hollow King said, and you will help, one way or another. Join willingly as my lieutenant, and keep your mind, your memories, resist, and be transformed like the others. Either way, you belong to the mountain now. The students were closing in. Dr. Whitfield raised her stone hammer. David's black eyes reflected my headlamp beam. I had maybe 10 seconds to make a choice. I thought about my daddy, working 32 years underground because he had no other options. I thought about my grandmother, keeping the old stories alive even when nobody believed. I thought about Thomas, good man, strong man, already half gone into darkness, and I thought about the 847 people I'd pulled out of caves over 17 years. Every single one of them got to go home, got to see sunlight again, got to live. I made my choice. Grandmother taught me more than blessings, I said quietly. I reached for my equipment belt, found my carbide lamp. The old kind, the kind that generates acetylene gas. I'd been carrying it as backup for years. She taught me that the Cherokee respect the earth, that they take only what they need, that they honor the balance. You're not honoring anything. You're planning to kill people. Collapse mines with workers inside. That's not Cherokee justice. That's just murder. The Hollow King's coal fire eyes burned brighter. You dare. I cracked open the carbide lamp and threw it hard against the cave floor. The acetylene gas began hissing out, invisible, lighter than air, rising toward the ceiling. Then I started speaking the words Grandma taught me. The blessing for caves, but I said them backward, the way she'd warned me never to do. The words that didn't welcome the stone, the words that pushed it away. The effect was immediate. The Hollow King roared, a sound like a mountain breaking, and the students stumbled, black eyes flickering with confusion. Thomas grabbed his head, screaming. I grabbed him and ran. The cave passage I'd entered through reappeared, the wall rippling open like a curtain. I dragged Thomas toward it, his feet barely working, his body half transformed and fighting my grip. Behind us, the Hollow King was growing larger, pulling more limestone into himself, becoming a creature of pure rage and stone. The students were chasing us now, moving with inhuman speed. I reached the passage and kept speaking the backward blessing, the words burning my tongue like I was swallowing hot coals. The cave walls were shaking, formations cracking and falling. My headlamp flickered. The acetylene gas was spreading, and I knew what was coming next. Thomas, I shouted, cover your ears. Then I fired my flare gun into the ceiling. The gas ignited. I've been in cave-ins before. I've felt the mountain move and shift and try to kill me. But this was different. This was the entire cave system screaming in pain and fury. The explosion wasn't huge. Acetylene burns fast and hot, but not with much pressure, but it was enough to disrupt the Hollow King's control, enough to crack the formations he was using to reshape the passages. Thomas and I ran through collapsing tunnels, through chambers filling with dust and broken stone. Behind us, I heard the Hollow King's voice, promising death, promising transformation, promising we'd never escape his kingdom. But we did. We burst out of the cave entrance just as the entire Devil's Backbone Ridge shuddered and settled. A massive sinkhole opened up 50 yards from the entrance, swallowing trees and boulders, collapsing down into the cathedral chamber below. Thomas collapsed beside me, gasping. His eyes were clearing, gray fading back to normal brown. But I could see the horror in them, the memory of what he'd almost become. Behind us, from deep in the collapsed cave system, I heard one final sound. Not rage, not fury, patience. The Hollow King could wait. They pulled 3 students out of the rubble over the next 2 days. Dr. Margaret Whitfield, David Ashford, and the young woman, Sarah Chen. The 4th student, Marcus Webb, was never found. Thomas officially went into the books as helping with the rescue, but he resigned from cave rescue the following week. The 3 survivors were institutionalized at Eastern State Hospital in Lexington. The doctors said it was severe psychological trauma, possibly from carbon monoxide exposure or contaminated water. They all suffered the same symptoms. Insistence that they could hear the mountain calling, occasional speaking in Cherokee, despite none of them knowing the language, and a violent fear of sunlight. David Ashford never recovered. He spent the rest of his life only 3 more years speaking only Cherokee, writing the same symbols over and over on the walls of his room. The symbols from the throne chamber. He died in 1979. The official cause was heart failure. He was 25 years old. Sarah Chen did better. She learned to function, learned to ignore the voices she said she heard in the stone of the hospital walls. They released her in 1982. Last I heard, she moved to Arizona, about as far from limestone caves as you can get in America. She never went underground again. Dr. Whitfield lives in a care facility in Louisville now. She's 68 years old, and some days she remembers being a geology professor. Other days, she talks about the kingdom under the mountains, about the king who's waiting, about the day of rising that's coming. The staff thinks it's dementia. I know better. Thomas moved to Florida 2 months after the incident. He calls me once a year. On the anniversary. We don't talk about what happened. We talk about fishing, about his kids, about anything except caves and Kentucky mountains. But I can hear it in his voice. He still hears it sometimes. The king's voice calling from the stone. The Kentucky Department of Natural Resources declared the entire Devil's Backbone area geologically unstable. They sealed the cave entrance with concrete and posted warning signs about sinkhole danger. My official report mentioned carbon monoxide, acoustic hallucinations, and mass psychological trauma from cave-in fears. They edited out everything else. I know the truth, though. And so does the mountain. I kept working as a ranger for 5 more years after that, did another 247 rescues, all successful, all by the book. But I never went back to Devil's Backbone. And I started hearing things in other caves too, whispers in Cherokee, the sound of distant hammering, warm spots in cold limestone. The Hollow King's influence was spreading through the cave systems. The whole Appalachian range, connected by underground rivers and limestone passages, all the way from Alabama to Pennsylvania. I retired in 1981 and moved to the surface office. No more cave rescues. I still live in Kentucky, but I built my house on sandstone, not limestone. No caves underneath me. No passages for the king to travel. But sometimes at night, I hear it. Feel it? The mountain, breathing, waiting. My grandmother's stories were all true. Dragging Canoe did refuse to surrender. He did choose transformation over death. And he's still down there, building his kingdom, recruiting his army, waiting for the right time to rise. The mining companies are still operating, still tearing apart mountains for coal, still poisoning water and killing workers with bad safety standards and corporate greed. Every man who dies in a mine collapse, every family that loses someone to black lung, every mountain that gets stripped down to rubble, that's another soul the Hollow King can call on. Another reason for anger. Another soldier in his army. I don't know when he'll rise. Could be 10 years, could be 100. But I know he will. The mountain remembers, and the mountain is patient. I'm 72 years old now, and I still won't go into caves. When tourists ask me about Devil's Backbone, about the sealed entrance and the warning signs, I tell them it's geologically unstable. Dangerous sinkholes, nothing to see there. But sometimes I get letters. From other rangers, from cavers, from people who've gone underground and come back changed. They all say the same thing. There's something down there, something old and angry, something waiting, and it knows their names. Last week, I got a letter from a ranger in Tennessee. He'd found fresh Cherokee petroglyphs in a protected cave. The formations around them were warm, and when he called into the cave, something called back. In Cherokee. My name is Jerry Mountainheart, and I spent 17 years pulling people out of caves. I'm telling you this story because you need to know. Stay out of the caves. The Hollow King is waiting, and he remembers every wrong done to these mountains. My name is Rebecca Stormridge, but everyone calls me Becca. I've been a ranger in Jefferson National Forest for 13 years now, and I've seen just about everything these Virginia mountains can throw at you. Black bears, rabid coyotes, even a mountain lion once that shouldn't have been this far east. I've tracked animals through conditions that would make most people turn back. And I've handled predator situations that sent other rangers running for desk jobs. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened in Copper Creek that October. I grew up in Wise County, coal country, where my daddy worked the mines until black lung took him when I was 16. My great-grandmother was Melungeon, that old mixed heritage of Cherokee and European settlers that people don't talk much about anymore. She used to tell me stories about the harvest moon, about how it brought out the devil's own hounds to protect mountain secrets. I always figured she was just mixing Cherokee legends with old country superstitions to explain why the coyotes got so active during mating season. Funny how wrong you can be. October 15th, 1983, started like any other autumn day. The leaves were turning gold and red across the ridgelines, and the morning air had that crisp bite that made you glad to be alive. I was at the ranger station, finishing my coffee and looking over reports, when the radio crackled. "Becca, you there?" It was Tom Jenkins, a farmer who lived up near Copper Creek. His voice sounded shaky, which wasn't like Tom at all. Man had fought in Korea and never lost his cool about anything. "I'm here, Tom. What's going on?" "Something killed 3 of my cattle last night. But it wasn't like any predator kill I've ever seen. You better come look at this." I grabbed my gear camera, plaster casting kit for tracks, my tranquilizer rifle just in case, and headed out in the truck. The drive up to Tom's place took about 40 minutes on those winding mountain roads. The higher I climbed, the more I noticed something odd. Birds were quiet. Too quiet. And I didn't see a single deer, which was strange for that time of morning. Tom was waiting by his barn when I pulled up. He looked like he hadn't slept, his face gray and tired. "They're in the back pasture," he said. "I haven't touched anything. Figured you'd need to see it exactly how it was." We walked across his property, and I could feel something wrong in the air. It was warm for October, had been all week, but suddenly it felt cold. Not regular cold, this was different, like the temperature had dropped 30 degrees in the space of a few steps. Then I saw the cattle. I've investigated dozens of predator kills in my career. I know what a bear attack looks like, what coyotes do, even what dogs can do when they pack together. This wasn't any of those things. 3 full-grown Herefords, each weighing over 1,000 pounds, were dead in a rough circle. But they hadn't been eaten. Most predators kill because they're hungry. They'll tear into the soft belly, go for the organs. These cattle had been arranged. Their throats were torn out with precision, and only their hearts and livers were missing. The rest was untouched. "Jesus," I whispered. "There's more," Tom said quietly. He pointed to the ground. The grass around each cow had died, not trampled, not torn up dead, perfect circles of brown, withered grass, like something had sucked all the life right out of it. And in the dirt between the dead zones I saw tracks. I've cast hundreds of animal tracks. I can tell you the difference between a coyote and a fox print at a glance, can age a track by how the edges have weathered. These tracks made my hands shake as I took out my camera. They were canine, but enormous. 8 inches across, maybe more. The claw marks extended 6 inches beyond the pad. I measured the stride length 6 feet between prints. No dog, no wolf, nothing. I'd ever heard of left tracks like these. "What do you think it is?" Tom asked. I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about my great-grandmother's stories, about harvest moonhounds. Then I shook my head. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe some rich idiot had been keeping exotic animals and they'd escaped. Maybe there was a genetic mutation in the local wolf population. Maybe, I don't know, Tom, I finally said. But I'm going to find out. I spent the rest of the day making plaster casts, taking photographs, collecting what samples I could. I called my supervisor and told him I needed to set up trail cameras around the area. He approved it without much fuss. Predator attacks were part of the job. What I didn't tell him was how the hair on the back of my neck wouldn't lie down flat, how the temperature kept dropping in random spots, how my compass started spinning when I got near the tree line. That night, I set up 6 trail cameras around Tom's property and 2 more properties where other farmers had called in similar attacks. The cameras were good ones, Reconyx models with infrared for night vision. They'd catch anything that moved. I drove back to my cabin as the sun set behind the mountains. The harvest moon was rising, huge and orange on the horizon. It looked like it was watching me. My great-grandmother's voice echoed in my head. The harvest moon brings the devil dogs, Becca. They protect what's sacred, and they don't forgive those who forget. I locked my cabin door that night. For the first time in 13 years as a ranger, I locked my door. The next morning, I drove out to check the trail cameras before dawn. The temperature had dropped overnight, real cold this time, not that weird pocket stuff from Tom's pasture. My breath fogged in the truck cab, even with the heater running. The first camera was at Tom's place. I pulled the SD card and checked it in my portable viewer, right there in the truck. Nothing. 6 hours of recording, and nothing but static. Not even the normal nighttime animals, no deer, no raccoons, no possums, just static. The second camera was the same, so was the third. The fourth camera wasn't there anymore. I found it 50 yards away, wrapped around a tree trunk like someone had thrown it. The metal housing was bent, twisted. But what made my stomach drop were the marks in the metal, deep gouges, like claw marks, that had cut through quarter-inch steel. I radioed back to the station. "I need Dale Mountaineer up here," I said. Dale was another ranger, younger than me but solid. If something weird was going on, I wanted backup. He met me an hour later at the 5th camera location, on the edge of a property owned by the Wilson family. Dale was 6'2", built like the college football player he'd been, and he had a practical streak a mile wide. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was him. "So what have we got?" he asked, climbing out of his truck. "Something's killing livestock, big tracks, strange behavior, and it's destroying our equipment." "Bears? Look at this." I showed him the photos of the tracks. Dale studied them for a long moment. "That's not right," he said slowly. "Those prints." "Becca, what animal has a 6-foot stride?" "None that I know of." We checked the 5th camera together. This one had footage. I wish it hadn't. The first few hours were normal deer passing through, a fox, some rabbits. Then, around midnight, everything changed. Every animal on the screen froze at once, their heads all turning in the same direction. Then they ran. Not scattered, not spooked, they ran together, like prey fleeing a forest fire. The screen went dark for a few seconds. Then the infrared caught something. Eyes, red eyes, glowing red, at a height of about 8 feet off the ground. "That's a malfunction," Dale said. "Has to be." But his voice wasn't steady. The eyes moved, across the frame, and for just a second, we saw a shadow behind them. Something massive, something that moved wrong, too fluid, too fast. Then the camera went to static. "We need to talk to the families," I said. "Find out exactly when these attacks started." The Wilsons were first. Sarah Wilson, an older woman who'd lived in these mountains her whole life, answered the door with a rifle in her hand. "You hear about the attacks?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me exactly what happened?" She invited us in, made coffee, and told us her grandfather had been killed 3 nights ago. Ezra Coalfield, 92 years old, found dead near his moonshine, still up in the hollow. "The sheriff said it was a bear," Sarah said. "But my grandfather knew these mountains. He wouldn't have let a bear sneak up on him." "Can you take us to where it happened?" I asked. Sarah looked at me for a long moment. "You know what the harvest moon means, Ranger?" "My great-grandmother used to tell stories," I admitted. "Then, you know, some things aren't meant to be disturbed." She set down her coffee. "But yes, I'll take you. Someone needs to understand what's protecting this place." We followed her truck up an old logging road, so rough it barely qualified as a road at all. The trees pressed in close on both sides, and the higher we climbed, the colder it got. Dale kept checking his watch, like he thought time was doing something weird. Maybe it was. Ezra's still was in a clearing near an old copper mine entrance, one of dozens that dotted these mountains from the mining boom in the 1800s. The still itself was intact, untouched, but the ground around it told a different story. More dead grass circles. More of those impossible tracks. And carved into the trees surrounding the clearing were symbols I'd never seen before. Patterns that looked part Cherokee, part something older. "My grandfather protected this place," Sarah said quietly. "This hollow has a Melungeon burial ground, old as the mountains. During the copper boom, companies tried to dig it up, looking for easy mine access. People died defending it. My grandfather said some of them never left." "You're saying ghosts killed your grandfather?" Dale asked, trying to sound reasonable. "I'm saying the harvest moon brings the guardians," Sarah replied. "And my grandfather was one of them. He chose it when his time came. Went up here during the last full moon and never came back human." I should have laughed, should have told her grief was making her imagine things. But I was thinking about those tracks, about eyes 8 feet off the ground, about my great-grandmother's warnings. "Who else has been coming around here?" I asked instead. "Survey crew from Richmond, day before yesterday. Development company wants to put in vacation homes. They were measuring near the burial ground." She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "They're all dead now, all 3 of them." That's when we heard the howl. It wasn't like any wolf or coyote I'd ever heard. It was deeper, resonating in my chest like thunder. And it was close. "We need to go," Sarah said. "Now." Another howl answered the first, this one from a different direction. Then another. And another. 6 howls, surrounding us. Dale's hand went to his tranquilizer rifle. "Becca, what do we do?" I looked at the sun, already dropping toward the western ridgeline. I looked at Sarah, who was backing toward her truck with that rifle up and ready. "We run," I said. We made it back to the trucks, but just barely. Something was following us through the trees. I could hear it keeping pace, could see branches shaking where nothing visible moved. Dale drove close behind me, his headlights in my rearview mirror, as we raced down the mountain. By the time we reached the main road, the sun was setting. The harvest moon was rising again, bigger than the night before, so bright it cast shadows. "Your place or mine?" Dale asked over the radio. "Ranger station," I said. "We need to figure this out." The station was empty skeleton crew at night, and I'd sent everyone home. We spread out the photos, the plaster casts, everything I'd collected over the past 2 days. Under the fluorescent lights, it all looked less supernatural and more like evidence of something we just didn't understand yet. "Could be an escaped exotic animal," Dale said, trying to logic it out. "Some rich guy's private zoo. Maybe he had wolves or something. Wolves don't make 8-inch tracks, and they don't carve symbols in trees. Okay, so maybe it's people, some kind of cult, using animals to scare folks away from." The lights went out. Complete darkness, except for the moonlight streaming through the windows. Emergency lights should have kicked on. They didn't. "Backup generator should have started," I whispered. "Should have," Dale agreed. We heard it then, footsteps on the roof. Heavy padding footsteps, like a dog the size of a horse. Back and forth above our heads, rhythmic and deliberate. Dale pointed his flashlight up. The ceiling tiles were bowing down under the weight of whatever was up there. "The radio?" I said. "Call for backup." Dale grabbed the radio handset. "Station 7 to dispatch. We have a situation. Static. But not normal static. This static had rhythm to it, like breathing. And then, through the static, words. Asterisk, protect, sacred. Ground. Asterisk. The words weren't in English. They were Cherokee, mixed with something older. But somehow, I understood them perfectly. Dale dropped the radio. "Did you?" "Yeah, that's not possible. None of this is possible." Something crashed through the window. Not the glass breaking, it was more like the glass ceased to exist for a second, letting something massive pass through, then reformed behind it. In the moonlight streaming through the intact window, I saw it. The hound stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder. Its fur was coal black, but traced through with patterns that glowed copper-colored in the moonlight. Celtic knots mixed with Cherokee symbols, swirling across its body like living tattoos. Its eyes were red, burning red, and they fixed on me with an intelligence that was completely human. "Becca Stormridge," it said. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Daughter of mountain blood. You know what we are." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 13 years of training, all my experience, all my rational mind gone. I was 5 years old again, listening to great-grandmother's stories by firelight. "The harvest moon hounds," I whispered. "We protect what was stolen, what was desecrated, what was forgotten." The hound took a step forward, and the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath in great clouds. "Those who would take from us, we take from them." Dale raised his tranquilizer rifle with shaking hands. "Stay back." The hound's eyes shifted to him. "Your bullets cannot pierce us, child. We are not flesh alone." "Don't." I grabbed Dale's arm. "Don't shoot it. It broke into a federal building, Becca. We have to." The hound moved faster than anything living should move. 1 second it was by the window. The next it was in front of Dale, its massive head level with his. It didn't hurt him, just looked at him with those burning eyes. "You feel it," the hound said to Dale. "The call. Mountain blood runs in you too, mountaineer. That is not a name given by chance." Dale's face went pale. "My grandmother was Melungeon. She never talked about it. They made us ashamed," the hound said. "Made us hide, made us forget who defended these hills when others would take everything." It turned back to me. "But the harvest moon remembers. We remember." "The people you killed," I said, finding my voice. "They were just doing their jobs. They were destroying sacred ground for money. For houses that will stand empty. For profit from land soaked in our ancestors' blood." The hound's form seemed to shift, becoming less solid, more like smoke in moonlight. "You will stop them. Daughter of mountain blood. Or we will. I'm a park ranger, not you are more." The hound moved to the door, which opened, though nothing touched it. Tomorrow night, the moon will be fullest. Come to the copper mine, learn what you are. Or stand aside and let us do what must be done. It was gone then, just gone, like it had never been there. The lights flickered back on. The radio crackled to life with normal dispatch chatter. Dale sat down hard on the floor. That just happened, right? Please tell me that just happened, and I'm not losing my mind. It happened. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. We need to find out who's planning to develop that land. We need to stop them. Becca, we just saw something that shouldn't exist. We should be calling someone who and tell them what? I pulled out the files on local development projects. That supernatural hounds are protecting a burial ground? They'll have us committed. Dale was quiet for a moment. What did it mean? Learn what you are. I thought about my great-grandmother's stories. About mountain people who became guardians. About the price of protection. I don't know, or I lied. But we're going to find out. The files showed a development company from Richmond had purchased 300 acres near Copper Creek, including the hollow where Ezra still was. Construction was set to begin next week right after the harvest moon. The company was called Appalachian Heritage Homes. The irony wasn't lost on me. We could talk to them, Dale said. Explain about the burial ground. Get them to move the development. With what proof? We don't even have official records of the burial ground. It predates any surveys. Then what do we do? I looked out the window at the harvest moon, now directly overhead. Something in my blood responded to it. Something old and angry and protective. Tomorrow night, I said, we go to the copper mine. We find out the truth. And if the truth is that we're both crazy, then at least we'll be crazy together. But I knew we weren't crazy. I'd seen those eyes. I'd heard that voice. And somewhere deep in my mountain blood, something was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for generations, waiting for the harvest moon to call it home. The next day felt wrong from the start. The forest was completely silent, no birds, no insects, nothing. Every animal with sense had gone to ground. Dale and I spent the day trying to contact Appalachian Heritage Homes, but nobody answered. We drove to their site office near Copper Creek and found it empty, windows dark. On the door was a notice. Project delayed pending environmental review. That's weird, Dale said. Nothing was filed for review. Maybe someone convinced them to stop, or something. We had 8 hours until moonrise. I went home to my cabin and tried to sleep, but couldn't. Instead, I went through my great-grandmother's things, boxes I'd kept in the attic after she passed. I found her journal, written in a mixture of English and Cherokee, with some words in a language I didn't recognize. One entry, dated October 1932. During a harvest moon, the hounds came for me tonight, offered me the guardian's blessing. I refused, told them my granddaughter would need me human. But I saw what I could become. What our people become when the land needs defending. It's beautiful and terrible, and I pray Rebecca never has to choose. My hands shook as I closed the journal. She'd known. She'd always known. At sunset, Dale and I met at the base of the mountain. We had flashlights, radios, and my grandfather's hunting knife iron. Blessed by a Cherokee, elder before I was born. Great-grandmother had made sure I kept it. We don't have to do this, Dale said. Yes, we do. The hike up took an hour in the fading light. The harvest moon rose as we climbed, full and massive, turning the forest silver. The temperature dropped with every step, our breath fogging. We reached the copper mine entrance, just as the moon cleared the ridgeline. They were waiting for us. 6 massive hounds, arranged in a semicircle around the mine entrance. Each one was unique, different sizes, different copper patterns glowing in their fur, but all had those same burning red eyes. The largest one, the leader, stepped forward. This close, I could see the patterns on its fur were actually scars, claw marks, and symbols carved into flesh that had healed into glowing copper. You came, it said, daughter and son of mountain blood. We came for answers, I said. Who are you, really? The hound's form shimmered, and for a moment, I saw a man old, weathered, wearing clothes from a century ago. Then he was a hound again. We are the ones who died defending what was sacred. Shot down by mining companies, burned out by developers, starved when they poisoned our wells. We are every Melungeon and Cherokee who fell protecting these mountains. The hound's eyes blazed brighter. And when we died, the land itself gave us new form, new purpose. We became its guardians. Ezra Coalfield, I said. Sarah's grandfather, did you kill him? He joined us willingly, as did others over the years. When mountain blood is strong enough, when the person is ready, we offer the blessing. Most refuse. Some accept. Dale spoke up, his voice steady. What does the blessing mean? Transformation. You keep your mind, your memories, your will, but your body becomes like ours. You hunt during the harvest moon. You protect sacred ground. You become part of something older than governments or laws. And if we refuse, I asked, then we do what we must alone. More will die. The development company sent surveyors today despite the notice. 3 more humans who thought profit mattered more than sacred ground. The hound's voice was sad but firm. They will not send more after tonight. You can't just kill people. We kill those who would kill us. Who would dig up our ancestors' bones for vacation homes? Who would poison our water for convenience? The hound moved closer to me. You know this is true, Rebecca Stormridge. You've seen what they do to these mountains. Your own father died because mining companies care more for coal than lives. The words hit me like a physical blow. He was right. Daddy had died because the company cut safety corners to save money. How many others had died the same way? There has to be another way, I said. There is. The hound's form shimmered again, showing the man beneath. Join us. Become guardians. Use the law and the wild together. You have authority among humans. We have strength in the shadows. Together we can protect what's left. I looked at Dale. He looked back at me, and I saw the same conflict in his eyes. What happens if we accept? Dale asked. Tonight, under the full harvest moon, you run with us. Learn what you are. Tomorrow, you wake human again but changed, forever tied to the land, to the moon cycle, to the pack. You'll transform during every harvest moon. You'll feel threats to sacred ground like wounds in your own flesh. You'll live longer than normal humans. The land sustains its guardians. And when you finally die, you'll join us permanently. And if we say no, then you leave. And we continue alone. But know that blood will flow. The development company will send more. We will kill more. Until humans learn to leave sacred ground untouched. I thought about all the years I'd spent protecting these mountains through rules and regulations. How many battles I'd lost to development projects, mining permits, logging rights. How the forest shrank year after year while I wrote reports nobody read. Then I thought about my great-grandmother, who'd refused the blessing so she could raise me. I need to think. That's when we heard the trucks. 4 vehicles grinding up the logging road, headlights cutting through the darkness. The lead truck had Appalachian heritage homes painted on the door. They're coming at night? Dale said. Why would they? Because they knew, I realized. Someone told them about the burial ground, and they decided to dig it up under cover of darkness. The hounds growled in unison, a sound that shook the ground beneath our feet. Choose now, the lead hound said. Stand with us or stand aside, but they will not desecrate this ground. The trucks were getting closer. I could hear men's voices, the sound of machinery being unloaded. I looked at Dale. What do we do? I don't know. But Becca, I can feel it. That call the hound talked about. It's real. It's in my blood, pulling me toward something. Toward them. I felt it too. A rightness, like coming home after a long journey. Like my great-grandmother's stories weren't just stories but a truth I'd been running from my whole life. The first truck broke through into the clearing. 6 men with shovels and a small excavator. They saw us, saw the hounds, and froze. What the hell? One of them shouted. The hounds moved into attack position, lips pulled back from teeth like daggers. I stepped forward, between the hounds and the men. You need to leave. This is protected ground. We have permits, the foreman shouted back. Legal permits. Your permits don't matter. This is a burial ground. You will not disturb it. Lady, I don't know what you're on, but we have a job to do. Now get those dogs under control before someone gets hurt. The lead hound spoke, and this time everyone heard it. Leave, or join those we've already sent to the earth. The men's faces went white. One of them raised a rifle. No, I screamed. But it was too late. He fired. The bullet hit the lead hound center mass and passed straight through, hitting a tree behind it. The hound laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Your weapons cannot harm us." That's when everything went to hell. The hounds charged, the men scattered. Dale grabbed my arm and pulled me aside as the pack flowed past like shadows made flesh. I heard screams, saw men running back to their trucks, saw the hounds herding them, not killing but terrifying, driving them away from the mine entrance. Then I saw the foreman pull a grenade from his belt. Military surplus. Dale breathed. Jesus, they came prepared. The foreman pulled the pin and threw it not at the hounds, but at the mine entrance itself. At the burial ground, time slowed down. I saw the grenade arc through the air, saw the lead hound leap to intercept it, saw Dale start running. The explosion lit up the night. When the smoke cleared, the mine entrance had partially collapsed, and the lead hound was down, his form flickering between man and beast, copper patterns fading to gray. The other hounds howled. The sound was grief and rage mixed together, so loud my ears rang. I ran to the fallen hound. Up close I could see his form stabilizing into the man underneath. Ancient, weathered, but peaceful. "They destroyed it," he whispered. "The entrance, our ancestors' bones are buried." "I'm sorry," I said. Tears were streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry." He looked at me with eyes that were no longer red but brown human. "Don't be sorry, be a guardian. Finish what we started. Please." His hand reached up and touched my forehead. Power flowed from him into me, old, wild, beautiful power that smelled like pine needles and copper and rain. "I accept," I heard myself say. "I accept the blessing." The harvest moon blazed overhead, brighter than any moon I'd ever seen. And I began to change. The transformation hurt less than I expected. It felt like diving into cold water, a shock, then acceptance, then a strange new clarity. My body shifted, grew, reformed. Fur sprouted, senses sharpened until I could smell each individual man's fear, hear their heartbeats, taste the moonlight on my tongue. When it finished, I stood on 4 legs, 8 feet tall at the shoulder. Copper patterns glowed across my black fur patterns that told the story of my family, my ancestors, every mountain person who'd fought to protect this land. Dale was transforming beside me, his form taking on the shape of a wolf the size of a bear. His patterns were silver copper, different from mine, but just as beautiful. Together, we looked at the men who'd destroyed the burial ground. They ran, God help me, they ran, and we let them go. We weren't killers, we were guardians. There's a difference. The other hounds surrounded us, welcoming us. The fallen leader's form had faded completely, but I could feel him now, part of the land itself, part of us. We spent that night repairing what we could. With supernatural strength, we cleared the mine entrance, found the burial ground intact beneath newer rubble. We marked the perimeter with symbols that would warn others away. Symbols any mountain person would recognize and respect. At dawn, we changed back. I woke up human, lying in the leaves with Dale beside me. We were both naked, transforming, shredded our clothes, but neither of us cared. We'd been through something too profound for embarrassment. "Did that really happen?" Dale asked. I looked at my hands. Copper patterns were faintly visible on my skin, like metallic tattoos that only showed in certain light. "Yeah," I said, "it really happened." We hiked down in spare clothes we'd stashed in our trucks. My body felt different, stronger, more aware. I could smell things I'd never smelled before, hear things that should have been too quiet to detect. The forest was welcoming me home in a way it never had before. At the ranger station, there was an urgent message waiting. Appalachian Heritage Homes had officially withdrawn their development plans. The company cited unforeseen complications and local environmental concerns. Translation: 6 men had seen something impossible, and none of them ever wanted to come back. The burial ground was safe. Over the next few weeks, things slowly returned to normal. Or a new kind of normal, anyway. Dale and I kept working as rangers, but now we had a different job too. During every harvest moon, we transformed and ran with the pack. We protected sacred sites. We watched over places humans had forgotten but the land remembered. Sarah Coalfield took over her grandfather's moonshine operation and became the liaison between our pack and the mountain communities. She made sure word spread. Some places are protected. Some grounds are sacred, and the harvest moon brings guardians who don't forget. The development companies learned. They stopped surveying near Copper Creek. Stopped trying to build on land that felt wrong. They called it superstition, but they respected it anyway. I transferred to cultural preservation after a year. Seemed more appropriate given my new role. Dale stayed in wildlife management, but specialized in habitat protection. Together, we made sure the mountains were preserved through human law during the day and ancient law during the harvest moon. Sometimes tourists ask me about the legends about moonhounds and mountain guardians. I smile and tell them they're just old stories. But I know the truth. 3 nights ago was another harvest moon. I ran with the pack through the Copper Creek watershed, my copper patterns glowing in the moonlight. We marked our territory, checked on sacred sites, made sure the land was safe, and at dawn, I changed back to human and went home to my cabin. I'm still Becca Stormridge, park ranger. But I'm also something more now, something older, something that my great-grandmother understood even when she refused the blessing herself. I'm a guardian. And the harvest moon keeps rising, keeps calling, keeps bringing us home to protect what's sacred. Some nights, when the moon is bright, I stand on my porch and listen to the howls echoing across the ridgelines. Tourists think it's coyotes. Local people know better. They're not just howls. They're promises. Promises that some things are worth protecting, that some grounds stay sacred, that mountain blood remembers what others forget. And when the harvest moon rises full and bright, those promises are kept. Always. My name is Isaiah Thornfield, but everyone calls me Ike. I've been a ranger in the Chattahoochee National Forest for 18 years now, and before that, I spent 6 years as an Army combat medic in Afghanistan. I've seen things that would make most people quit and go work in an office. I've pulled hypothermia victims back from the edge of death. I've set broken bones on mountain trails with nothing but duct tape and tree branches. I've talked suicidal hikers down from cliff edges at 2 in the morning. But I've never seen anything like what happened on Blood Mountain in February of 1995. Blood Mountain got its name from a Cherokee legend about a great battle fought on its slopes. The old stories say the ground ran red for days. I always thought it was just a story, the kind of thing that makes tourists take pictures and buy t-shirts. The Cherokee elders I've trained with over the years told me other stories too. Darker ones about things that walked these mountains when the hunger got too strong, when people broke the old laws about what you should and shouldn't eat to survive. I always figured those were just cautionary tales. Ways to teach people not to lose their humanity when things got desperate. I was wrong. February 8th started like any winter morning in the mountains. Cold, clear, beautiful, in that sharp, painful way that makes your lungs burn when you breathe. I was at the ranger station doing paperwork when the call came in from the University of Georgia's outdoor program. They had 12 students doing a week-long winter survival course up near the Blood Mountain Peak. Standard stuff, building shelters, finding water, staying alive in freezing temperatures. The instructor leading them was Jennifer Ravenshollow, someone I'd certified myself in wilderness medicine 2 years before. Smart. Careful. Not the type to take stupid risks. Weather's changing fast, Jennifer said over the radio, her voice crackling with static. We're seeing ice forming on everything. Going to shelter in place at the old CCC camp. Good call, I told her. Forecast says ice storm's going to be bad. Stay put and check in every 6 hours. That was the last normal conversation I had with her. By noon, the ice storm hit like nothing I'd seen in almost 2 decades of mountain work. Trees started snapping under the weight. Power lines came down across 3 counties. The roads turned into skating rinks. Within 4 hours, we'd lost all communication with everything north of Dahlonega. Cell towers were down. Radio was spotty at best. The emergency beacon network was the only thing still working, and barely. Jennifer's group was 45 miles from the nearest town, up where the roads were already impassable. No power, no communication, no way to get help in or out until the storm passed. I wasn't worried yet. Jennifer knew what she was doing. They had supplies for 2 weeks. They knew how to stay warm and dry. This was exactly the kind of situation they were training for. Then the emergency beacons started acting strange. I was monitoring them from the ranger station, watching the little blips on my screen that showed where each student was located. Standard procedure, everyone in the backcountry carries one, and they transmit location and basic vital signs every 15 minutes. At 6 p.m., I noticed something odd. One of the beacons, registered to a student named Marcus Darkwood, was showing 2 different heart rates at the same time. Not like one heart rate that changed, 2 separate rhythms, both broadcasting from the same device. Equipment malfunction, I said out loud to myself, making a note to check it when they came down. At 7 p.m., 3 more beacons started doing the same thing. By 8 p.m., I couldn't reach Jennifer on the radio at all. Just static, and something underneath it, a wet, crunching sound that made my stomach turn. That's when I called Sarah Bloodworth. Sarah was another ranger, 10 years younger than me, but maybe even better in the backcountry. She could start a fire in a rainstorm with wet wood. She could navigate by stars and conditions that would get most people completely lost. She also happened to be 1/4 Cherokee and had spent summers as a kid learning traditional medicine from her grandmother. "I'm heading up there," I told her when she answered. "Something's wrong. In this storm, Ike, the roads are sheets of ice." "I know, that's why I need you. You know Blood Mountain better than anyone." She was quiet for a moment. "Then, what aren't you telling me?" I told her about the beacons, about the strange radio sounds, about the feeling in my gut that I'd learned to trust over 18 years of emergency response work. "I'll meet you at the trailhead in an hour," she said. "Bring the winter medical kit." We started up the mountain at 9 p.m. with headlamps, ice axes, and enough emergency medical supplies to handle anything short of major surgery. The trail was a nightmare. Ice coated everything, rocks, roots, fallen logs. Every step was a gamble. The temperature was dropping fast, already down to 15 degrees and falling. "How far to the CCC camp?" Sarah asked, her breath coming out in white clouds. 5 miles. Maybe 6, with these conditions. I checked my GPS. Beacons show the group spread out over about a 1/4 mile radius. That's wrong. They should all be in one shelter. Maybe they had to split up, build multiple shelters. Maybe. But I didn't believe it. Jennifer wouldn't split the group in these conditions unless something had gone very wrong. We hiked for 2 hours in silence, focusing on not dying. The wind picked up, driving ice crystals into our faces like tiny knives. My hands were numb inside my gloves. My feet felt like blocks of wood. At 11 p.m., we found the first sign that something was really wrong. It was a backpack, torn open and scattered across the trail. I recognized the University of Georgia logo. Inside were shredded clothes, a broken flashlight, and an emergency beacon still transmitting. The beacon belonged to Thomas Grimwald. "Where is he?" Sarah said, sweeping her headlamp across the forest. That's when I saw the tracks. They started where the backpack was and led off into the woods. Human footprints, bare feet in the snow, not walking, running. The stride was too long, the prints too deep, like someone had been sprinting with impossible strength. "Who takes off their boots in an ice storm?" Sarah whispered. I didn't answer because I'd seen the other tracks, the ones following Thomas's prints. They looked human too, but wrong. The toes were too long. The prints were too deep, like something much heavier than a person had made them. And there were marks in the snow between the footprints, like something had been dragging along the ground. "Ike!" Sarah's voice was tight. "Look at this." She was pointing at a tree about 10 feet off the trail. There were marks carved into the bark Cherokee symbols that I recognized from my cultural training. Warning signs. The kind that said taboo and forbidden and do not enter. "These are fresh," Sarah said, running her gloved hand over the cuts. "Someone made these in the last few hours. Jennifer knows some Cherokee traditions. Maybe she was trying to." "No." Sarah's face was pale in the LED light. "These aren't warnings for animals or bad weather. These are warnings about other things." "What things?" She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. The same things my grandmother used to warn me about. The things that walk when people get too hungry and forget they're human. I wanted to tell her that was just superstition. Old stories. But the tracks in the snow didn't look like they came from anything human. We found Thomas a half-mile further up the trail. What was left of him? I've seen death before. Combat death, the kind that's violent and sudden and leaves nothing to the imagination. But this was different. This was something else entirely. Thomas was in pieces. Not cut, not chopped, torn, like something with immense strength had simply pulled him apart. His bones were cracked open, the marrow scraped out. His skull was crushed, the contents gone. And written in the snow around him, in what I desperately hoped was animal blood, were more Cherokee symbols. Sarah made a sound in her throat that was half sob, half retch. "We need to leave, right now." "We can't. There are 11 more people up there." "Ike, you don't understand what this—" A sound cut her off. Coming from up the trail. A voice, human but wrong. Too deep, too wet. Singing in words I almost recognized but couldn't quite understand. And underneath the singing, the sound of eating, of bones breaking, of something hungry and satisfied and eager for more. Sarah grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. "That's not human anymore," she whispered. "That's what happens when someone breaks the taboo. When they eat what they're not supposed to eat and like it too much." My grandmother called them Wendigo. I finished, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. The Cherokee elders had told me the stories. Spirits of endless hunger, created when someone ate human flesh and couldn't stop. Always cold, always starving, always hunting. I'd thought they were just stories. The singing got louder, closer. And now I could see something moving through the trees, tall, too tall. Moving with a strange, jerky grace that hurt to look at. "Run," I said. We ran. We made it maybe a quarter mile before we heard it following us. Not running, walking. Taking its time because it knew we couldn't escape. The ice made speed impossible. Every step was a risk. One wrong move and we'd fall, break something, become easy prey. Behind us, the singing continued. Playful, hungry. "The camp," Sarah gasped. "If we can get to the camp, there'll be others." Safety in numbers. But I was starting to wonder if that was true. The emergency beacons were now showing 8 people with multiple heartbeats. 8 out of 12 students. And the beacons were moving in patterns that made no sense, circling, converging, spreading out like a pack of wolves hunting. We burst into the clearing where the old CCC camp stood at 1 a.m. 3 stone shelters from the 1932nd, partially collapsed but still providing some protection from the wind. Smoke was coming from one of them. "Jennifer," I shouted. "It's Ranger Thornfield. We're here to help." For a long moment, nothing. Then a shape appeared in the doorway of the smoking shelter. A woman, but I almost didn't recognize her. Jennifer looked like she'd aged 20 years in 2 days. Her eyes were wild. Her hands were shaking. "You shouldn't have come," she said flatly. "You need to leave." "We found Thomas. What happened to him?" Jennifer laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "He got cold. He was going to die." "And Marcus?" "Marcus said we had to stay warm. Had to keep our strength up. He said it was basic survival. Just meat. Just protein." My blood went cold. "Jennifer, what did you do?" "Not me." Her voice broke. "I wouldn't. But some of them. They were so hungry." And once Marcus started, once he took that first bite, a figure stepped out of the darkness behind her, tall, impossibly thin, moving in that strange, wrong way I'd seen in the trees. It had been Marcus Darkwood once. I could still see traces of the 20-year-old college student in the face. But everything else was wrong. His skin was gray-white, stretched too tight over bones that seemed too long. His eyes reflected our headlamp beams like an animal's. His fingers had grown into something like claws. And his mouth, God! His mouth was full of yellow, broken teeth that looked like they'd been filed to points. "Ranger Thornfield," Marcus said, his voice a wet, deep rumble. "Perfect timing. We were just sitting down to dinner." He smiled, and I saw bits of frozen flesh stuck between his teeth. Sarah raised her ice axe. "Stay back." Marcus laughed. "Or what? You'll hit me? I've been hit. I've been shot. Rebecca tried to kill me with a rock. Want to know what happened to Rebecca?" He gestured behind him. In the shelter, I could see shapes huddled together. Students. Living students. And parts that weren't living anymore. "The cold doesn't hurt anymore," Marcus continued, taking a step toward us. "Neither does hunger. I mean, I'm always hungry now, but eating fixes it, for a while." Another step. "You know what the best part is? I'm stronger. Faster. Better than I ever was. All it cost was giving up being weak." Jennifer grabbed his arm. "Marcus, please. They're here to help." He looked at her with something that might have been affection once. They can't help Jen. Nobody can. And you know what? I don't want help anymore. This feels good. This feels right. He turned his attention back to us. But I am curious about something. Do rangers taste different than students? Sarah moved first. She threw something, a small leather pouch that she wore around her neck. It hit Marcus in the chest and exploded in a puff of white powder. Sage smoke, blessed by Cherokee medicine people. Marcus screamed. Not a human scream. Something higher, shriller, filled with rage and pain. The skin where the powder touched him was burning, steam rising in the freezing air. Run! Sarah yelled, grabbing my arm. We ran again, but this time toward one of the other shelters, where I could see more students huddled together. Survivors. We burst through the door, and Sarah immediately started dragging debris to block the entrance. How many are here? I asked. A girl I recognized as Amanda Shadowbrook looked up at me with empty eyes. 5. There were 8 this morning. Marcus got 2 of them at lunch. And Rebecca. Rebecca tried to fight him. She's not moving anymore. I did a quick head count. Amanda. 2 other students whose names I couldn't remember. Jennifer had followed us in and was slumped against the wall, and in the corner, barely breathing, was Rebecca Nightfall. She was torn up badly, missing chunks of flesh from her arms and legs. Bite marks. Human-sized bite marks. I grabbed my medical kit and went to work. Combat medic training kicked in. Stop the bleeding, stabilize, keep her alive. But I knew it was bad. She needed a hospital, not a ranger with a first aid kit in a frozen stone shelter while something that used to be human hunted outside. He's changing others, Jennifer said quietly. Everyone he bites. Sarah, that powder, it hurts him, but it won't stop him. Nothing stops him. Sarah was at the door, peeking through gaps in our barricade. It's not just him anymore. There are 3 of them out there now, walking together, hunting together. Who else? I asked. I don't know. They all look the same now. Tall, thin, wrong. Outside, the singing started again. 3 voices this time, harmonizing in a language that made my head hurt. Cherokee words mixed with something older, darker. Hunger-given voice. Rebecca opened her eyes. Ranger, she whispered. It's in me now. I can feel it. So hungry, so cold, and it feels good. Her teeth were starting to yellow. We need to burn it out of her, Sarah said flatly. Right now, before she turns completely. That's insane, I snapped, still working on Rebecca's wounds. She needs antibiotics, not. She needs to die human or become something that will hunt us all. Sarah's voice was hard. I've heard the stories my whole life. The only way to stop the transformation is with sacred fire. Burn the infection out before it reaches the heart. Rebecca was looking at me with eyes that were already changing. The whites were turning gray. Her fingers were twitching, lengthening. Do it, Rebecca whispered. Please. I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be hungry forever. I looked at my medical supplies, at my hands that had saved dozens of lives over the years, at this girl who was maybe 19 years old, dying in front of me from something that shouldn't exist. I can't, I said. I'm a medic. I save people. Then you'll kill us all, Jennifer said from the corner, because when she turns, she'll be inside our shelter, with us, and she'll be just as strong and just as fast as Marcus. Outside, something heavy hit the barricade. Wood cracked. The singing got louder, more excited. Sarah pulled out a lighter and a small bundle of cedar and sage. Rebecca, are you sure? Yes. Rebecca's voice was changing, getting deeper. Hurry. What happened next is something I'll never forget and can never fully explain. Sarah lit the sacred bundle and pressed it against Rebecca's chest, over her heart, while speaking in Cherokee. Words I didn't understand but felt in my bones. Old words, powerful words. Rebecca screamed. Her body arched. Her skin smoked where the sage touched it, but differently than with Marcus. Not burning, purifying. The gray faded from her eyes. Her teeth returned to normal, and something dark and oily seemed to leak out of her wounds and evaporate in the smoke. Then she went still. For a horrible moment, I thought we'd killed her. Then she took a breath. Shallow, weak, but human. It worked, Sarah said, surprised. The transformation was still early enough. It actually worked. The The barricade exploded inward. Marcus stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 other Wendigo. I recognized one as a student named Derek. The other might have been the assistant instructor. They moved together, synchronized, like parts of the same hungry thing. "That's not fair," Marcus said conversationally. "We were going to have another sister, another hunter. You took her from us." He took a step inside. Sarah threw more sage powder, but he was ready this time. He dodged, moving with impossible speed. His hand shot out and grabbed Sarah's wrist, jerking her toward him. "You know the old ways," he said, pulling her close. "You'll make a strong one. Stronger than the others." His teeth were at her throat. I didn't think. I grabbed my ice axe and swung it into his back with every ounce of strength I had. The blade sank deep between his shoulder blades, right where the spine met the ribs. Marcus howled and released Sarah, spinning to face me. The axe was still buried in his back. He reached behind himself, grabbed it, and pulled it out like it was nothing. Blood that looked more black than red dripped from the wound. "That," he said, "actually hurt." The other 2 Wendigo rushed in. Jennifer screamed. One of the students tried to run and got grabbed, pulled into the darkness outside. His screams cut off suddenly. Sarah was on the ground, clutching her shoulder where Marcus had grabbed her. Already I could see the skin darkening, the infection spreading. "Run!" Jennifer yelled at the remaining students. "Out the back! Into the woods! Scatter!" They ran. The Wendigo didn't follow. They were focused on us now. On Sarah, who was transforming. On me, who had actually hurt one of them. On Jennifer, who had witnessed everything and probably knew too much. I pulled Sarah to her feet. "Can you walk? For now?" Her voice was tight with pain. "But Ike, I can feel it. The hunger. It's growing. Fight it. We're getting out of here." Marcus was still standing in the doorway, blocking our escape. But there was a crack in the back wall of the shelter, a gap just big enough to squeeze through if we were desperate. We were desperate. I dragged Sarah toward it. Jennifer followed. Behind us, Marcus laughed. "Run all you want. We can track. We can smell you. And soon, Sarah will be one of us, and she'll tell us exactly where you're going." We squeezed through the crack and emerged into the forest. The storm was letting up, stars visible between the clouds. That meant we could see. That meant they could see us too. "Head downhill," I said. "Toward the creek. They don't like water." "How do you know that?" Jennifer gasped. "I don't. But every Wendigo story Sarah's grandmother told includes running water as protection." We ran. Or tried to. Sarah was slowing down. Her breathing was getting heavier, rougher. When I looked at her in the moonlight, I could see her features changing, lengthening, sharpening. "Leave me," she said. "I'll hold them off." "No. Ike, I'm not going to make it down the mountain, but I can buy you time. Let me do that. Let me end this as myself, not as one of them." Behind us, the singing started again. Closer. They were playing with us, like cats with mice. We reached the creek. It was frozen on top, but I could hear water running underneath. Sarah fell to her knees at the edge. "I can't cross it," she said, wonder in her changing voice. "It's like a wall. The water. It's blessed somehow. Protected." She was right. I could feel it too, though it didn't affect me the same way. The creek marked a boundary, a line the Wendigo couldn't cross. "Then we cross and you stay on this side," I said. "You hold them off while we run for help." Sarah looked at me with eyes that were now more gold than brown. "You were always terrible at goodbyes, Ike." She turned to face the trees as Marcus and his pack emerged from the darkness. Jennifer and I crossed the creek as Sarah faced down 3 Wendigo alone. I wanted to stay, wanted to help, but I knew the best help I could give was to survive and get rescue teams up here. Behind us, I heard Sarah singing, not the Wendigo hunger song, but something else. A Cherokee death song that her grandmother had taught her. She was choosing to die human, to fight the transformation with her last breath. The sounds that followed will haunt me forever. We ran for 6 hours straight, only stopping when we hit the Ranger Road and found a truck with a working radio. By the time we got a helicopter up to Blood Mountain, it was morning. They found 4 survivors, including Amanda, who lived but would never speak about what happened. They found 5 bodies that had been consumed. And they found 3 sets of tracks leading deeper into the wilderness, away from humanity. Tracks that were too long, too deep, and too inhuman to follow. Sarah's body was never recovered. Neither was Marcus's. The official report called it a tragic case of hypothermia-induced psychosis, leading to survival cannibalism. The university shut down their winter survival program. The families got settlements. The media attention died down after a few weeks, but I know the truth. And so do the Cherokee elders who came to Blood Mountain the week after the incident. They spent 3 days performing rituals, marking trees, blessing the creeks and trails. The mountain will hold them for now, one elder told me, but they'll always be hungry, and hunger that strong will eventually find a way out. I retired from ranger service 6 months later. Couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something unfinished up there. Something hungry and patient and waiting. Last winter, there were reports of hikers going missing in the Blood Mountain area. 3 of them, experienced winter campers who should have known better. Search teams found their equipment scattered across a quarter-mile radius, torn apart like it was paper. They found tracks too. Human-shaped. Wrong. And carved into the trees around the disappearance sites were fresh Cherokee symbols. Warnings, taboos, boundaries that had been crossed. I still have dreams about Sarah, about the moment she chose to fight the Conrees, transformation instead of giving in. Sometimes, in the dreams, she wins. Most times, she doesn't. But she always sings that death song, and I always wake up with tears on my face. The thing about working in wilderness rescue for 18 years is that you learn to trust patterns. Animal behavior. Weather signs. The way injured hikers move versus the way healthy ones do. And one pattern I've learned to recognize is hunger. The kind that drives animals to do desperate things. The kind that makes people do things they'd never normally do. But there's another kind of hunger. The kind that never stops. The kind that grows with every bite. The kind that turns people into something that walks on 2 legs and speaks with human words but isn't human anymore. Blood Mountain has that kind of hunger in it now. And every winter, when the storms come and the temperatures drop and people go into the backcountry thinking they can survive anything, that hunger wakes up and starts to hunt. I'm not a ranger anymore. I'm not a medic. I'm just a man who knows that some stories aren't just cautionary tales. Some monsters aren't just legends. And some hungers can never be satisfied, only avoided. If you ever find yourself on Blood Mountain in winter, and you hear singing in the trees, and you see tracks that look almost human but not quite run downhill. Run toward water. Run until you hit roads and civilization and light. And whatever you do, don't stop until you're sure you're not hungry anymore. Because once that hunger starts, it never really ends. My name is Nathaniel Ridgewalker, but everyone calls me Nate. I've been a ranger in the Pisgah National Forest for 20 years now, and I've seen just about everything these North Carolina mountains can throw at you. Broken ankles, hypothermia, lost hikers, even a few folks who thought they could outrun a black bear. I've pulled 234 people off these peaks, and I'm proud to say every single one of them made it home alive. The winter of 1989 was different though. That's when I learned my grandmother wasn't speaking in metaphors. I grew up listening to her stories. She was full Cherokee, raised by people who'd survived the Trail of Tears. On cold nights, she'd tell me about the bone singers' spirits, who used instruments carved from human bones to call the dead back for ceremonies. I always figured it was her way of teaching me to respect the old burial sites scattered through these mountains. A poetic way to say that grief echoes through the valleys long after people are gone. I should have known better. My grandmother never spoke in poetry. She spoke in warnings. It was January 21st when the call came in. 3 experienced hikers had gone missing on Grandmother Mountain during a blizzard. The leader was a guy named Michael Crowfeather Cherokee, like me, and he knew these trails as well as I did. They'd been attempting a winter traverse of the Appalachian Trail section that cuts across the peak. Smart hikers with good gear and a solid plan. They should have reached Neal's Gap shelter by nightfall. Instead, we got an emergency beacon signal coming from somewhere above the tree line, where no one should be able to survive more than a few hours in a storm like this. I grabbed my pack and checked my equipment one more time. Black Diamond ice tools, Peeps avalanche beacon, MSR winter shelter, enough gear to handle 3 days in sub-zero conditions if I had to. My partner Amanda Whitehorse met me at the trailhead. She was younger than me, only 32, but she'd grown up in these mountains too. Her Cherokee grandmother and mine had been friends. "Weather Service says the storm's getting worse," Amanda said, checking her radio. "We've got maybe a 6-hour window before it becomes a whiteout up there." "Then we move fast," I said. The hike started normal enough. Fresh snow crunched under our snowshoes, and our headlamps cut clean beams through the falling flakes. We followed the Appalachian trail markers, moving at a steady pace that ate up the miles without burning us out. I'd done this route hundreds of times. But around 4,000 feet, things started feeling wrong. The wind changed. Instead of the usual howl that comes screaming across exposed ridges, it seemed to be making sounds almost like syllables. Amanda noticed it too. I could see her tilting her head, listening. "You hear that?" she asked. "Just the wind," I said, but I didn't believe it. We pushed higher. The trees got smaller, twisted by years of ice and wind, until we broke above the tree line into the full force of the storm. That's when I saw the first strange thing. The snow wasn't falling normal. In most places, it came down at an angle, driven by the wind like it should. But in patches, circular patches, maybe 20 feet across, it was falling straight up, rising into the sky like someone had flipped gravity upside down. "Nate," Amanda's voice was tight. "Tell me you're seeing this." "Probably just updrafts from the warm rocks," I said. But the rocks weren't warm. Everything up here was frozen solid. My avalanche beacon started beeping. I checked the display. It was showing multiple signals, which meant multiple people buried in snow. But the signals were coming from different directions: north, south, east, west. Like someone had planted beacons in a perfect circle around us. "That's not right," Amanda said, checking her own beacon. "I'm getting the same thing." We followed the strongest signal north, toward the old Cherokee ceremonial site my grandmother had told me about. The place where the tribal elders used to sing for their dead before the soldiers came and forced everyone west on the Trail of Tears. I'd been up here before, but never in winter. The stone circle was usually just a ring of old rocks barely visible in the grass. Now, in the snow, I could see it clearly. Too clearly. The stones were arranged in a perfect circle, each one topped with snow that had formed into shapes, long shapes, bone shapes. Femurs, ribs, skulls, all made of packed snow, but so detailed they looked real in our headlamp beams. "What the hell?" Amanda whispered. That's when we heard the singing. It was faint at first, barely audible over the wind. But it was definitely singing words in Cherokee, following the rhythm of the old death songs my grandmother had taught me. The ones you sing to help spirits find their way to the next world. There was no one else up here. There couldn't be. We would have seen their tracks. "Hello?" I called out. "Forest Service, if you can hear me, make a sound." The singing got louder. And now I could tell it wasn't coming from one direction. It was coming from everywhere at once, rising up from the mountain itself. My radio crackled to life. Through the static, I heard words. Cherokee words. "Dohi. Dohi. Uli Helisti. Peace. Peace. Sacred ceremony." "That's not the Weather Service," Amanda said, her voice shaking. I tried to respond, but the radio only played more singing. Different voices now, dozens of them, all harmonizing in a way that made my chest ache. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Then my GPS unit started acting up. The coordinates were changing, even though we were standing still, and they weren't random numbers, they were forming patterns. When I looked close, I realized the numbers spelled out Cherokee syllabary symbols. "We need to find those hikers and get off this mountain," I said. "Now." We followed the beacon signals deeper into the ceremonial site. The snow was getting heavier, cutting visibility down to maybe 10 feet. But in that 10 feet, I kept seeing things that shouldn't be there. Footprints that appeared in fresh snow with no one making them. Ice formations that looked like people standing in the storm. And everywhere, that singing. It got inside your head, made you want to sing along even though you didn't know the words. Amanda grabbed my arm. "There," she said, pointing. Through the snow, I saw a shape, human-sized, sitting cross-legged in the center of the stone circle. We ran toward it, expecting to find someone frozen, maybe already dead. It was Michael Crowfeather. He was alive. But he shouldn't have been. He wore only light hiking clothes, no winter jacket, no gloves. His skin should have been blue with frostbite. Instead, he looked warm, comfortable. He sat in perfect posture, holding something in his hands. A flute. Made of bone, human bone, from the look of it too long to be anything else. "Michael," I said. "Michael, can you hear me?" He didn't look at us. He raised the flute to his lips and started playing. The sound cut through the storm like a knife, clear and pure and impossibly sad. The melody matched the singing we'd been hearing. "Michael, we need to get you out of here," Amanda said, reaching for him. He pulled back. "Can't leave," he said calmly. "Not until the ceremony is complete." "What ceremony?" "The dead need to go home." His eyes finally met mine, and I saw something in them that made my blood cold. Recognition. Not of me, of something in me. My heritage, my blood. "You hear them too, don't you, Nate? You're one of us. Your grandmother taught you the songs." I had heard them. All my life, I'd heard music in these mountains that other rangers couldn't hear. I'd always thought it was just imagination, or maybe the wind playing tricks. What are the other hikers?" I demanded. Michael smiled. "They're learning the music, like I did, like you will." He started playing again, and this time the storm responded. The wind picked up, but instead of random howling, it created harmony with his flute. Other instruments joined in: drums, rattles, more flutes. An entire orchestra was playing around us, invisible in the snow. Amanda's beacon started going crazy, signals everywhere, moving in patterns. She looked at the display, and I saw her face go pale. "Nate, the signals are forming a circle around us, and they're getting closer." I looked at my own beacon. She was right. Dozens of signals, maybe hundreds, all converging on our position. But there was nothing out there. Just snow and wind and that impossible music. "We're leaving," I said, grabbing Michael's arm. "Right now." He didn't resist, but he also didn't help. He was dead weight in my hands, still playing that bone flute. I tried to pull him up, but it was like trying to move a boulder. He was somehow anchored to the ground. That's when I saw the first one. A figure in the snow. Tall, wearing traditional Cherokee ceremonial dress made of deerskin and shells. But the shells were white bone white, and they clicked together in rhythm with the music. The figure was translucent, like fog shaped into a person. Through its body, I could see the storm still raging. It was playing a drum. A drum I could hear, but couldn't see. "Amanda," I said quietly, "don't move." She'd seen it too. More figures were appearing around the stone circle. Dozens of them, all playing instruments made of bone. They formed a perfect ring around us, and they were getting more solid with each passing second. One figure stood out from the others. An old woman in the full regalia of a Cherokee medicine woman. She walked toward us, glided, really, her feet not quite touching the snow. Her eyes were kind but infinitely sad. She spoke in Cherokee. I understood every word, even though my grandmother had only taught me bits and pieces of the language. 20,000 died on the march west. Did you know that, Nathaniel Ridgewalker? 20,000 of our people, buried in unmarked graves along the trail. No ceremonies, no songs, no way to help their spirits move on. "You're Awanita," I said, somehow knowing her name. "The medicine woman who stayed behind. I tried to complete the death ceremonies before the soldiers took us," she said. "I hid the sacred items, the bones of our honored dead, in the caves below this mountain. I sang for 3 days and 3 nights, trying to send the spirits home. But the soldiers came. They shot me while I sang." She smiled sadly. "I've been singing ever since, waiting for someone to help me finish." Amanda was shaking beside me. Not from cold, from recognition. I realized she was seeing the same thing I was. The Cherokee blood in both of us made us visible to the spirits, made us vulnerable. "We can't help you," I said. "We're here to rescue living people." "These 3 are living," Awanita said, gesturing to figures in the snow. 2 more shapes became visible. The other hikers from Michael's team, both sitting in ceremonial positions, both playing bone instruments. They came to the sacred ground during a storm. The spirits recognized their Cherokee blood and called them to service. They agreed to help complete the ceremony. "They're hypothermic," I said. "They're hallucinating. They didn't agree to anything." "Ask them," Awanita said. I did. I went to each hiker, checked their vital signs, tried to rouse them. All three were medically fine, better than fine. No frostbite, no hypothermia, normal pulse and breathing. But all three refused to leave. They kept playing their instruments, kept singing, kept staring at me with eyes that saw something I couldn't. The ceremony requires Cherokee blood, Awanita explained. It requires the Terrans living to sing for the dead, to call them home from their scattered graves. We are so close now. We've been gathering strength through the winters, waiting for enough Cherokee descendants to return to the sacred ground. With these three, we almost have enough, but we need one more. She looked at me, through me, into me. No, I said. Your grandmother walked these mountains for 70 years, Awanita said. She heard us singing. She taught you to hear us too. She prepared you for this. She told me stories. That's all. She told you truth. Awanita's voice was gentle but firm. We don't want to hurt you, Nathaniel. We don't want to hurt anyone. We just want to go home. 20,000 spirits, trapped between worlds for 150 years. Surely you understand that pain. I did. God help me, I did. My grandmother had died 3 years ago, and I still felt her presence in these mountains. Still heard her voice in the wind. The thought of her trapped, unable to rest, unable to move on. Nate, Amanda said urgently. We need to call for backup. We need. Her radio crackled to life, but instead of the emergency frequency, it played music. Death songs, sung by the chorus of spirits surrounding us. My radio did the same. Every piece of electronic equipment we carried, GPS, beacon, radio, headlamps, all of it started pulsing in rhythm with the music. The mountain itself had become an instrument, and we were trapped inside it. You can leave, Awanita said. Take your friend and go. But the ceremony will continue. Every winter, more Cherokee descendants will hear the calling. More will come to help us. And eventually, one will stay. She looked at Amanda now. Perhaps it will be her. Amanda staggered back like she'd been hit. Her face went white, and I saw something change in her eyes. Recognition, understanding, fear. No, she whispered. No, I hear them. Nate, I hear them calling my name. Fight it, I said, grabbing her shoulders. It's hypothermia. It's the altitude. It's real, she said. My grandmother, she's here. She's singing. I looked where Amanda was staring and saw nothing. But Amanda saw something. Her face softened with a mix of joy and terror that scared me more than anything else had. Elise, she whispered. Grandmother. You came back. Amanda, your grandmother died 15 years ago, I said firmly. What you're seeing isn't real. But I wasn't sure anymore. Because I was starting to see things too. Shapes in the snow that looked familiar. Voices I recognized mixed in with the Cherokee death songs. My own grandmother, maybe. Or the memory of her voice so strong it had become real. The spirits were getting more solid. The bone instruments they played were becoming visible flutes, carved from human femurs, drums made from skulls stretched with skin, rattles made from finger bones strung together. The sound was overwhelming now, not just music but a physical presence that pushed against my chest, made my heart beat in rhythm with the drums. Michael Crowfeather stood up. The bone flute he'd been playing was still in his hands, but now I could see it had his name carved into it in Cherokee syllabary, like it had been made just for him, waiting for him. It doesn't hurt, he said, looking at me with clear, sane eyes. That's what you're wondering, right? If it hurts to become one of them. It doesn't. It's like coming home. Like finding the place you were always supposed to be. You're from Tennessee, I said. You're a software engineer. You have a wife and 2 kids waiting for you. I'm Cherokee, he said simply. Everything else is just details. These spirits are my ancestors. They need help. How can I say no? He walked toward the circle of spirits, and they opened to let him in. He took his place among them, still playing his flute, and now I could see him starting to fade. Not disappearing, transforming, becoming, translucent like them. Becoming a bone singer. Stop, I shouted. Michael, think about your family. I am, he said, his voice already sounding distant. I'm thinking about the families who never got to bury their dead. The mothers who lost children on the trail of tears and couldn't even stop to dig graves. The grandparents who died in the snow and were left behind because the soldiers wouldn't wait. My family will be sad, but they'll understand. These families have been waiting for 150 years. He faded completely into the circle. One of the spirits now, indistinguishable from the others, except for the modern hiking boots on his feet that hadn't quite transformed yet. Amanda took a step toward the circle. "Don't," I said, grabbing her arm. She looked at me, and I saw tears freezing on her cheeks. "They're calling me, Nate. All of them. I can hear my grandmother, my great-grandfather, people I never met but somehow recognize. They're saying it's time. Time to help. Time to serve." "It's not time," I said desperately. "You have a life. You have—" "What, a job, an apartment in Asheville? That's not a life, Nate. That's just existing." She smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. My grandmother used to tell me I was born for something special, that the spirits had marked me. I thought she was just trying to make me feel better about being different. But she was right. They did mark me. And now they're calling in the debt. "There is no debt," I said. "You don't owe dead people anything." Juanita's voice cut through the storm. "Is that what you truly believe, Nathaniel? That the living owe nothing to the dead? Then why do you visit your grandmother's grave every month? Why do you leave tobacco and cornmeal on the stone in the old way she taught you? Why do you still hear her voice in these mountains? Because I loved her. Because she raised me when my parents couldn't. Because she taught me everything that mattered." "That's different," I said. "How?" I didn't have an answer. Amanda pulled free from my grip, not violently, gently, like she was saying goodbye. She walked toward the circle of spirits, and I saw them begin to open for her too. "Amanda, please," I said. She stopped, turned back. "Find the burial cave," she said. "Below the ceremonial site, about 50 yards down the east face, there's a crack in the rocks that leads to a larger chamber. That's where Juanita hid the bones of the honored dead before the soldiers came. If you want to save me, save Michael, save the others, you need to help complete the ceremony properly. Otherwise, we'll be trapped here forever. Singing, waiting, never quite alive, and never quite dead." "How do you know about the cave?" "Because my grandmother showed it to me," Amanda said. 20 years ago, when I was 12. She brought me up here and made me promise never to tell anyone. She said someday I'd understand why. Now I do." She turned back to the circle and stepped inside. I watched her start to fade, watched her pull a knife from her belt and begin carving something from a piece of wood. No, not wood. Bone. One of the bone formations in the snow had become real in her hands, and she was carving it into an instrument. I was alone now. 3 park rangers lost to whatever this was, 3 hikers transformed into something between life and death, and me, standing in a circle of spirits who were patiently waiting for me to make a choice, run or stay, save myself or help them. My radio crackled one more time. This time I heard my grandmother's voice, as clear as if she was standing next to me. "Nate, baby, go to the cave. You know what to do. I taught you all the songs." "Grandma?" I whispered. "You're not Cherokee by accident, grandson. You're Cherokee because someone survived when they should have died. Someone was strong enough to keep going when everything was taken from them. Honor that strength. Help these spirits find peace." The radio went dead, the storm intensified, and I was left with a choice that shouldn't have been a choice at all. Except my grandmother's voice had been real. I knew it had been real. I looked at the eastern edge of the ceremonial site, where Amanda said the cave would be. Then I looked back at the circle of bone singers, all of them watching me, waiting. "If I do this," I said to Juanita, "if I help you complete the ceremony, you let them go. Amanda, Michael, the others, they come back to the living world. Deal?" Juanita considered this. The other spirits murmured to each other in Cherokee, debating. "The ceremony requires Cherokee blood to sing the old songs," she finally said. "But it does not require them to remain as bone singers forever. If you help us complete what was interrupted 150 years ago, if you help us send the 20,000 spirits home, then yes, the living can return to life." "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "Because," Juanita said softly, "we are not demons or monsters, Nathaniel Ridgewalker. We are your ancestors. We would never harm our own children." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But I'd seen enough horror movies to know that good intentions don't matter when you're dealing with the supernatural. The dead always want something, and they never stop wanting it. Still, what choice did I have? I couldn't leave Amanda here. Couldn't leave Michael and the others. And if there was even a chance that my grandmother's spirit was trapped in these mountains, unable to rest. "Show me the cave," I said. The spirits parted to let me through. I walked east, following Amanda's directions, my headlamp cutting a weak beam through the intensifying storm. 50 yards down the east face, she'd said. I counted my steps, watched for the crack in the rocks. The wind was screaming now, driving snow so hard I could barely see 3 feet ahead. The temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees. My exposed skin burned with cold, and ice was forming on my beard. Then I found it. A narrow crack in the granite, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. I could feel warm air coming from inside, not hot, but warmer than the storm. The mountain breathing, I wedged myself into the crack and pushed deeper. My pack scraped against the rock walls. For a horrible moment, I thought I was stuck, trapped between stone slabs in the dark. Then the crack opened up into a larger space. I fell forward into the cave. My headlamp illuminated a chamber about 20 feet across, and covering every surface, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, were bones. Human bones, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Skulls and femurs and ribs and vertebrae, all carefully arranged in ceremonial patterns. Some were old, turned brown with age. Others were newer, still white. All of them had been placed here with care, with respect, with love. This was where the Cherokee had hidden their sacred dead before the Trail of Tears. The honored ones. The medicine people and warriors and elders who deserved proper burial ceremonies. And in the center of the chamber, arranged in a perfect circle, were the remains of Awanita herself. I recognized her from the skull's delicate features, the traditional medicine woman's tools laid beside her bones. She died here, singing, trying to complete the ceremony even as the soldiers searched for her above. My radio crackled. All the spirits were speaking now, their voices overlapping in desperate harmony. "Sing for us, complete the ceremony, send us home." I knelt beside Awanita's remains. My grandmother had taught me the death songs, yes, but she'd never taught me the full ceremony. I didn't know all the words, all the rituals. I was going to fail. Then I saw it carved into the cave wall in Cherokee syllabary. The complete ceremony, every song, every prayer, every step of the process. Awanita had carved it here before she died, preserving the knowledge for whoever came after her. I pulled out my emergency supplies and found what I needed. Tobacco, because I always carried some for offerings at the sacred sites. Cornmeal, because my grandmother had taught me to never enter a Cherokee site without it. Matches, because I'd need fire. I built a small fire in the chamber, careful not to damage any of the bones. I laid out the tobacco and cornmeal in the traditional way, and I began to read the songs carved into the wall. The Cherokee words came easier than they should have. Like my grandmother was speaking through me, or maybe like I'd always known them and just forgotten. I sang for the dead who had no one to sing for them. I sang for the mothers who lost children. I sang for the elders who died in the snow. I sang for Awanita, who gave her life trying to help them. The cave began to glow, not from my fire, from the bones themselves. They were lighting up one by one, pulsing in rhythm with my songs. Outside, I heard the storm change. The wind stopped screaming and started singing back. The bone singers were joining me, their voices harmonizing with mine through the stone walls. Amanda's voice was there. Michael's. The others. And thousands more, all the trapped spirits who had been waiting 150 years for this moment. I sang for hours. My voice went hoarse, but I kept going. The songs told me to call each spirit by name, but there were 20,000 of them. I couldn't possibly name them all. Then I realized I didn't have to. The bones knew. As I sang, each bone in the chamber began to glow brighter, and with each glow came a whisper, a name. I spoke the names as they came to me, trusting the bones to guide me through the ritual. Walking bird. Stands in water. Speaks with thunder. Holds the dawn. On and on. Thousands of names. Thousands of spirits finally being acknowledged, finally being sent home with the proper ceremonies they'd been denied. The cave grew brighter and brighter until I couldn't look at the bones anymore. The light was pure white, clean, warm, like sunlight through spring leaves. And then, finally, it was done. The last name spoken, the last song sung, the last prayer offered, the light faded, The bones stopped glowing. The cave fell silent. I stumbled out of the crack in the rocks, back onto the mountain. The storm had stopped. The sky was clearing. Stars were visible for the first time in days. The stone circle was empty. The bone singers were gone. The ceremonial ground looked like nothing more than old rocks covered in snow, but lying in the center of the circle were 4 people. Alive, breathing, Amanda, Michael, and the 2 other hikers. They were unconscious but warm, their vital signs normal. I ran to Amanda first, checking her pulse, her breathing, her temperature. All normal. Better than normal, like she'd just woken up from a peaceful sleep. Her eyes opened. She looked at me and smiled. "You did it," she whispered. "I heard you singing. We all did. It was beautiful." "Are you? You?" I asked. "Are you still Amanda?" "I'm still me," she said. "But I'm also more. I understand things now that I didn't before. I can hear the mountains speaking. I can feel the spirits that remain, the ones who chose to stay, who want to protect this place." "The bone singers?" "Some of them," she confirmed. "Not all the spirits wanted to move on. Some wanted to stay here, to guard the sacred sites, to help future Cherokee visitors understand what this place means. They asked if I would help them, if I would be a bridge between the living and the dead. And you said yes." I said yes. She sat up, looking stronger than she should after everything that had happened. "Someone needs to do it, Nate. Someone needs to make sure what happened to our ancestors doesn't get forgotten. Someone needs to teach the old songs, maintain the old ways, help people understand why these mountains are sacred." I looked at Michael. He was waking up too, looking confused but alive. "What about him?" I asked. "He chose to stay as well," Amanda said. "But not like me. He'll live in the world below, but he'll come to the mountain during ceremonial times. He'll teach other Cherokee descendants about the bone singers, help them understand the responsibility we carry." The other 2 hikers were waking up now, both looking dazed but unharmed. "They'll go home," Amanda continued. "They'll remember what happened, but they chose not to carry the burden. Not everyone is meant to be a bridge between worlds." I helped them all to their feet. The sky was fully clear now, stars brilliant against black velvet. The temperature was rising. The storm that should have killed us all had passed. "We need to get off this mountain," I said, "before another storm comes." Amanda looked back at the ceremonial ground one last time. "They're at peace now," she said. 20,000 spirits, finally able to rest, finally home. "Because you sang for them." "My grandmother sang for them," I corrected. "I just," carried her voice. "She'd be proud of you." We started the long descent, all 5 of us, back toward the tree line in safety. Behind us, the stone circle stood silent in the starlight. But now when I looked at it, I didn't see a ring of old rocks. I saw a doorway, a thin place where the living and the dead could meet, where songs could carry between worlds, and I knew that doorway would always be there, waiting, calling. It took us 8 hours to get off the mountain. By the time we reached the trailhead, dawn was breaking over the peaks. The storm had cleared completely, leaving the forest covered in fresh snow that sparkled like diamonds. The other rangers were waiting for us, with thermal blankets and hot coffee. They'd been about to send up a larger rescue team, had already called in helicopters from Asheville. They were shocked to see all 5 of us walking out alive. "What happened up there?" the station chief asked. "We lost radio contact for 12 hours. Thought for sure we'd be recovering bodies." I looked at Amanda. She gave me a slight nod. "Weather got bad," I said. "Found the hikers hypothermic near the old Cherokee site. Had to wait out the storm in a natural shelter before we could safely descend. Standard winter rescue procedure." It wasn't exactly a lie, just incomplete. The 2 younger hikers backed up my story. They remembered the storm, remembered being cold, remembered strange dreams while sheltering from the weather. But they didn't remember the bone singers, didn't remember the ceremony. Whatever they'd seen had faded like a dream upon waking. Michael was different. When they interviewed him separately, he told them the truth. All of it. The spirits, the bone instruments, the singing. The investigators looked at each other with concern, made notes about possible hypothermia-induced hallucinations, recommended psychiatric evaluation. He didn't care. He'd experienced something real, and he wasn't going to pretend it hadn't happened. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Michael. He'd gone home to Tennessee, back to his wife and kids and his software engineering job. But something had changed in him. "I'm studying Cherokee ceremonial practices," he told me. "Learning the old language properly, talking to elders, understanding what the bone singers were trying to preserve. And Nate, I'm not the only one. There are others. Cherokee descendants who've heard the calling, who want to help protect the sacred sites, who want to make sure what happened during the Trail of Tears doesn't get forgotten." "That's good," I said. "The mountains need people who understand them." "They need you too," Michael said. "You're the one who completed the ceremony. The spirits trust you. Will you help us? Help teach others about the sacred sites, about the proper protocols, about why these places matter." I thought about my grandmother, about the 20 years I'd spent in these mountains, thinking I understood them. I'd known the trees and trails, the weather patterns and wildlife. But I hadn't known the deeper truth that the mountains themselves were alive with memory, with history, with the spirits of those who died protecting them. "Yeah," I said, "I'll help." Amanda never left the mountains. She transferred to a new position the Park Service created just for her Cherokee cultural liaison. Her job was to coordinate with the tribal government, educate visitors about sacred sites, and make sure the old ceremonial grounds were protected and respected. But her real job, the one that mattered, was serving as a bridge between the living and the dead. She could still hear the bone singers, could still feel their presence during winter storms. And when Cherokee descendants came to the mountains seeking connection with their ancestors, she helped them understand what they were hearing. She helped them learn the songs. As for me, I'm still a ranger. Still pull people off mountains, still deal with broken ankles and hypothermia and lost hikers. But now I carry different knowledge. I know which peaks are sacred. I know which stone circles should never be disturbed. I know what the singing in the wind really means. And on winter nights, when storms roll across the high peaks, I sometimes hear my grandmother's voice mixed in with the wind. She's not trapped, she's not suffering. She's just present. Part of the mountain now. Part of the eternal song that echoes through the valleys. The North Carolina Park Service never officially acknowledged what happened on Grandmother Mountain. They attributed everything to severe weather and altitude-induced hallucinations. They did, however, quietly establish new protocols for the Cherokee. Ceremonial sites. Special protection status. Restricted access during certain times of the year. Mandatory cultural education for all rangers assigned to the area. And they put up a new sign at the trailhead leading to Grandmother Mountain. It's written in both English and Cherokee. "Sacred ground. Please respect the voices of those who came before." Most hikers don't think twice about it. But some, the ones with Cherokee blood, the ones who can hear the deeper songs they understand. They know that on winter nights, when storms roll through and the wind makes music in the rocks, they're not alone on these peaks. The bone singers are still here. Not trapped anymore. Not suffering. But present. Watching, protecting, singing. And sometimes, if you listen carefully, if you open your heart to the old ways, you can hear them calling. They're calling you home.